Hello, everyone. Welcome to Innovator Insights, from idea to impact. This is the podcast where we interview successful product entrepreneurs and learn about their journey, how they got started, what obstacles they ran into, how they overcame them, and eventually built a successful business having an impact on the world. And today we're super excited to have Dan Dicker with us. He's the co-founder or the founder and CEO of Circular & Co. Without further ado, welcome, Dan. We're glad to have you.
Thanks very much, Henrik. It's great to be here.
And I apologize, I said co-founder. You are the sole founder, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah, for my sins, yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. So before we get into the circular and talk about starting the business, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where in the world you are, and what do you do outside of business when you're not working on circular?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you say that, when I'm not working on circular sounds, let's get into that later, perhaps.
Yeah.
We're based down in the southwest corner of the UK, a county called Cornwall, and we are now in our 23rd year of business. So, it seems like a very long time ago. My wife and I wanted to move to Cornwall. It's a sort of renowned place for surfing, and we love water sports. So that was actually the catalyst to move to Cornwall and set up my own business. I was previously designing. I was a product designer, product manager for Dyson, the vacuum cleaner company, and loved it. A phenomenal place to design. I would say virtually unlimited budgets, but there's no such thing in this world. But from an R&D perspective, it couldn't have been a better place to be. So I think when we moved to Cornwall, the only real opportunity for me personally to stay within design, because there's no real industry in Cornwall, it's very sort of touristy, was to set my own business up and attempt to do my own mini Dyson.
Yeah. And for people that aren't familiar with the geography of the UK, you're right on the water, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, right down on the southwest tip. If you look at the UK and think, crikey, who lives all the way down there? That's us.
Yeah, great. All right, that's great. Thanks for sharing. Looks like a beautiful place. Yeah. So you mentioned you started or you worked at Dyson for a while.
Yeah.
So was that kind of how did you always know you wanted to start a company, or was this something that came later in life?
I think it came later in life. I always wanted to design, and I guess I really wanted to work for Dyson, because at the time, 21 years ago, they were a really fast-growing, innovative company, and still are, in fairness to them. But I always wanted to design, and I never thought myself as an entrepreneur. But actually, when I look back, when I was in my younger days, I think I was a natural entrepreneur. I always wanted to do things a little bit differently. I remember setting up, there's a UK thing called a jumble sale, which is effectively where you gather up second-hand items from your village typically, and sort of hold an event where people can come and buy second-hand items. And it's called a jumble sale in the UK. But I actually set one of those up when I was 9, interestingly.
Wow.
My father was in the services and had done some work abroad within Africa, and I thought it'd be a great way of raising some funds to do a jumble sale. So actually, when I do think back, I was like, well, actually, I sort of had it in my blood, I think, from an early age.
Yeah, that's quite young to do something like that. That's wonderful. And then you went to college, university, presumably, before you joined Dyson?
Yeah, studied industrial design at university. And loved it. I think I'd always been a designer at heart. I was actually interestingly dyslexic at school, so although academically I was okay, I was sort of reasonably okay, and was sort of, I'd say, in the top half of everything. I think I always favoured the creative side because of my dyslexia, and I think you are dyslexic, your brain does tend to work in a different way, and I think that tends to, I believe, has held me in good stead in life, because I think you are a bit more creative. You think of things a bit differently, a bit more outside the box. You're good at thinking on your feet, and you're good at communicating, and you're very good at kind of reading a room. So, and I think I've learned over the years they're really good skills to have if you set your own business up, and it's reading a room is a pivotal part of sort of grabbing opportunities and making the most of opportunities.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I think out of the last half a dozen podcasts I recorded, we had at least two who had ADHD and really struggled in school. And so thanks for sharing that you had dyslexia. And so you think that actually that helped you become more intuitive and, like you said, better at reading a room?
Yeah, absolutely. I do. Yeah. And you also get quite robust and resilient because of it, because it can, especially as a youngster, it can be embarrassing on occasions, and you struggle. So you do become quite resilient, quite determined. So all those things that sort of, I'm not surprised a lot of entrepreneurs have those kind of issues. And I think what's great over the last few years, probably 5 years, is it's become to be a thing that's celebrated now, which it can only be a good thing. And I hope it sort of spurs people on to gain confidence. And, we need entrepreneurs coming from somewhere, because, without getting too heavy, a lot of the education system, particularly in the UK, is very moving towards non-entrepreneurial kind of skill sets, where it's very strong focus on English and maths and kind of feeding the system, and the creative side of things is being neglected. So I think it's there could be a gap there, and I think
I agree 100%. I'm Swedish myself, so I grew up in in Europe, and I think a similar education system. I wasn't even aware there was such a thing as an entrepreneur, that you could actually start your own business. It was never mentioned or talked about. So that came later in life for me too. So you spent 3-4 years at Dyson, and then you started Circular & Co. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What was the origin story there? How did you come up with the idea, and how did you start?
I think I was driven by, I did a bit of work whilst I was at Dyson around sustainability and looking at whether we can make products from waste materials. And very much sort of personally driven by me, because I just thought technically I'd come to realize it probably could be done and wanted to do it. But at the time there was, in fairness to Dyson, a sort of 30% increase on the cost by using recycled materials then, and it was kind of put on the back shelf. So when I left Dyson and thought, right, I'm going to do my own thing, that was very much one of my USPs, I thought, as a company, is like, let's make our endeavor, our products made from recycled materials. And this was 23 years ago, so it was way before things like the circular economy were a thing. So I guess by luck, really, we were sort of ahead of our time. We've always been a bit of ahead of our time in terms of the way we go about designing products. So if we roll on 3 years now, we're still holding that mantra. So every product we design is made from waste materials. It's designed to last as long as possible, so we keep materials in the system for as long as possible. And then critically, it's recyclable at the end of its life. So with that, since day dot, that's something we've always tried to do.
So today you have a whole line of products, and love to learn more about the reusables and returnables. But if we go back to that 2003, how did you get started? What was the first product?
Well, my journey's been interesting, I think, because a lot of the businesses I talk to and startups that we've partnered with and have relationships with, it's very much driven by investment. And my journey has been completely the opposite. It's been a slower organic growth. We've never had investment ever. It's always organically grown. And I guess how I started typifies that, where, for 3 years, I worked on my own in literally a shed in my back garden, developing fairly simple products that I could get manufactured on a relatively low budget. And I just started really small. So my first sort of mini invention was actually, I guess, because of my water sports background, but it's a clock, but it was a clock called a tide clock. And I developed a system where you could effectively have a clock that would be synchronized to the tide cycles. And you could just look up, have it in your kitchen, look up and know effectively what the tide's doing. Yeah. I actually, it's a perfect little startup project. Yeah. I could do it all myself. And that's how I got started. And I literally, for 3 years, just doggedly kept going at that. And I'd tell you.
So was it a digital clock or
analog?
Analog clock. Okay, great.
Yeah. But it's one of those niche products, but actually it had a very big market. There's so many people who are involved with water sports globally. But I literally set about just going into targeting wholesale and going into retail shops and trying to get my product into as many retail shops as possible. And literally within probably 3 or 4 months, I've got 100, 150. And I'd say I sort of had established a business within 3 or 4 months by just doing it that way, and had enough income to sustain myself. So it happened quite quick, and then I just organically grew it from there, sort of getting more and more shops, and then slowly taking on people to help me developing broader ranges of products. But as I say, generally they've been home and lifestyle products, relatively low capex to just be able to keep it all within our own organic sort of budgets. And growing it. And I guess the USP of being made from waste materials, backed by, if I do say it ourselves, sort of quite innovative designs, because the market, you can't go into a market just on sustainability. Fundamentally, the product's got to stand up on its own 2 feet. It's got to be ticking a need or a want. It's got to be functionally good. It's got to be robust. It's got to be designed well. It's got to fulfill a need for people. So you still have to tick all the usual boxes, but at the same time, you're trying to do it in a sustainable way and through a sustainable angle. Yeah. We've grown very organically, but now.
And sorry, just a quick question on that. So your design background, you created the design, you build a team to help you. Did you manufacture in the UK or overseas, or how did you approach that?
Yeah, initially UK. So in our 23-year cycle history, I think we've been manufacturing overseas and more globally, probably sort of 10 years in. So the first 10 years, everything was sort of more local UK manufacturing volumes that was sort of sustainable for us to grow with. But year on year, other than COVID, we've had growth every single year for 23 years. I think the first probably 10 to 15 years were, 10, 15, 20, 30% growth, but nevertheless growth year on year. So we've always grown, other than a dip over COVID. So
it's amazing.
And I think that in hindsight, the skill set I learned as a designer really helped me set up a business, because in product design, industrial design, you learn about manufacturing, you learn about end costs and how to sort of build up what are the costs. So I guess the economics of designing a product and making it profitable. You kind of learn about marketing. So you kind of touch on all these areas to be able to develop a product. So I think that really helped me in setting up my own business. Don't get me wrong, for the first 3 years, I'd phone a shop and they'd say like, "Oh, would you like a pro forma invoice?" And I'd be like, "What on earth is a pro forma invoice?" And just quickly be looking life. And I learned as I went. And just like you do. I guess if you're sort of entrepreneurial by nature, you're not scared by that. Yeah. I think I've learned quite a lot of people are, but I think if you're kind of a bit entrepreneurial, you're like, well, for want of a better phrase, and I guess it's a UK phrase, is I was quite happy to and brave enough to wing it and think, I always think, well, what's the worst? Even now, I think, what's the worst case scenario here? And if I'm not going to lose everything and people aren't dying and everyone's going to be safe, then it's worth the go. So it's a calculated risk, but nevertheless it's a risk, and it's like not being fearful of that. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't bother me at all. It never has. It's like I'm prepared to just try.
I think it's have you ever listened to the Founders podcast? It's great to see that, recurring pattern that people that are successful entrepreneurs are often they approach problems differently than other people. You see problems as opportunities. Right? You find a problem, you get almost excited about it. It's like, wow, this is cool. here's something we
Yes.
need to solve. And if we can solve it better than others, then we have a competitive advantage, right?
Yeah. No, that's definitely what excites me and drives me. I love the fact that, who knows what will be around the corner next year. That's what gets you up in the morning.
Yeah. So it seems right now, if I look at Circular & Co., that it's very focused on drinkware and reusable and returnable drinkware. Was that a recent shift, or have you been focused in that area for a long time?
It is fairly recent in our overall history. It's only really in the last 7 or 8 years we've moved more towards that area, and I think we did consciously because we found a bit of a niche for ourselves in that area and had high growth. So 7 or 8 years ago, we actually pulled back on, our product range was 60 to 70 products, and we cut it by 30 or 40 just to focus on the reusable sector because that was booming for us. And it's that classic problem where actually sort of 80% of our noise and energy was going into a sort of 20-30% turnover side of the business, and we realized that so many products were taking a lot of our attention, and it didn't need to. It's quite a big move for us, but we did slim everything down and go, look, that's actually just focus and do well that sort of market sector.
Yeah, I imagine that was not an easy move, right? To let go of some of the darlings that you've created, and like your babies almost, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, and interestingly, it was more of a harder move for the rest of the team and all the staff, I think, than it was for me, because I think by nature I'm always sort of looking ahead, thinking and getting excited about what we can do ahead. And actually, what's happened in the past is the past, and kind of even down to keeping the old products. Everyone was like, "Well, we've got to keep some and make sure we keep them for prosperity." And I was kind of like, "Oh, that's we made a decision. It's like that was the past." So actually, I think it's important to be mindful of your wider team as well with decisions like that, and make sure they still, not everyone like you, and you need to take that into account for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so true. So please tell us more about the current product line. I read a little about your returnables, and you recently posted about some of the key metrics that you've been showing. Could you give us an overview of what the product line is, and then talk a little more about how that whole angle of actually having returnables and tracking metrics and all that stuff, which I think is incredibly interesting.
Yeah, well, the business is set up into 4 different sectors now. We've got sector 1 is what we class as our reusables. So that's designing reusables that people keep. It's a sort of retail item. You buy it, you keep it, and you use it, hopefully constantly, and it just becomes part of your everyday. Another part to our business, and they're all actually about roughly a quarter each in terms of turnover and energy, as it currently stands. One of the other sectors is what we class as returnable. So that's effectively a model where you borrow the cup rather than owning it, you borrow it, and that I can come into is sort of really exciting and growing massively. The other part to our business is branding and sort of more B2B. So, and effectively, I think we've grown into that over the years, where we had so many businesses say, "We love your reusables, but can we have our logo on it?" And we give one to all our staff, and that's a sort of growing side business. And the other part we do is kind of like a circular design. I guess it's an agency, but we don't actually charge for it. But we design products for other brands, and look at trying to close the loop for them. So typically, we'll look at a waste stream for that brand. They're generally big global setups with big waste issues. We'll assess their waste and think, well, actually, can we recycle that and turn it back into products that they can then use back into their own system? And that can be anything, literally from a pencil to a palette. So we do that side of things as well, because we have got a bit of a name for ourselves as that sort of circular design company that can try and solve a few waste problems. So that's how we are at the moment. That's how we're structured and set.
That's fascinating, and we'd love to dig in a little more into the reusables and what you call the tap and reuse dashboards. Have you built a whole system, a software platform around that product? Is that right?
Yeah, we've actually teamed up with a really cool innovative startup over in Germany called Cleanup. So they've done the clever bit and developed the tech side of it. And they kind of approached us and teamed up to say, well, actually, you guys are really good at developing what we call the hardware, so the physical sort of packaging. There could be a partnership there. So I think we've now teamed up over the last 3 years to sort of develop it all as a partnership, helping out on the tech side from our reach perspective. So now we've developed what we really genuinely, honestly think is the best global platform for borrowing food packaging. And our whole mission is to eliminate single use. So if we take, say, a single use paper cup, our platform now will allow you, say, if you're a cafe, the way tap and reuse works is that you'll pay your coffee like normal, but instead you'll be given your coffee in a reusable cup, which incidentally is a nicer drinking experience for you. I mean, I always perplexed as to how people, in Europe pay nearly sort of £5 or €5 for a lovely coffee and then have it in the most horrid single-use sort of drinking experience. It's bizarre. You'd never do it with anything else, but for some reason we've got into that habit. So you'll get it in a far nicer drinking experience. But so you pay for your coffee, you get your coffee, it's in a returnable. And the way our system works is we have a magic counter. So the barista puts the cup on the counter as normal as they're handing it over to the customer. Under the counter is an RFID reader, and embedded within the cup is an RFID chip. So the reader picks up the cup or cups, however many cups you put on the counter. A little terminal lights up. You tap your card on that terminal, and then the card is linked to that cup or those cups. So it's free. You're not downloading any apps. There's no deposit. The system is free to use. All you're doing as a customer is that 1 second tap, which takes seconds. All the barista's doing is literally waiting for them to do a second tap. And then off you go. But the system works by trying to incentivize people to bring it back through a penalty system. So if you don't bring the cup back within 10 days, that's when you'll actually be charged. In the UK, it's £3. So that's the sort of incentive to make sure people bring it back. And we found that £3 is about right. It's enough where people actually want to bring it back, but it's not so much that it becomes a sort of barrier for people and a reason for them not to do it. That's
super interesting. So they get a discount on the coffee and the outset?
Yeah. So our system doesn't allow for that, but a lot of the partners we use, the cafes or the cafe chains, they offer a discount to try and get people to go that way as well. Yeah, it's really interesting. It's fascinating, the psychology of it all as well, and especially when you start to build up data about how people behave. One interesting insight is the difference between if you run a borrowing platform that offers a deposit at the beginning, the numbers are way down. That people don't engage with it because they don't want to pay a deposit. If they do engage with it, then it's quite problematic for them to bring it back and then wait. People tend to then wait to see their deposit come back. Even if it's £1, you'll literally see people drop a cup back at a deposit station and physically look at their phone and wait for the pound to come back, because they sort of don't quite trust the system, and they need to see it come back to see if the system works. It's not about the pound, it's just about the trust of the system.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're offering the other alternative, which is a penalty, then they're just not psychologically as bothered. So they're happy to just put the cup back and walk off because they know they brought it back within 10 days. So they're happy. They feel content that it's just going to work.
Yeah.
There's some really interesting patterns psychologically that we're picking up on, which is really interesting because, a lot of people in that side of the industry say, well, actually, the dial's not going to move until consumers start changing their behavior. But I think we're proving that actually, if you put systems in place that are just seamless and easy to use, it really quickly becomes a new habit. And I think it's a bit similar to electric cars. I've had an electric car for a long time. And I always say to people who are dubious, I was like, honestly, as soon as you have one and use one, you'll realize it's really straightforward, and it's just a habit you get into that's ridiculously easy. But there's always that barrier. And I think we've got evidence to show now with pilots and schemes that we're running that people quickly make the switch. It's a bit the same with driverless taxis in the US. Everyone says, oh, for the first 10 minutes, I was really scared and dubious about it. But literally within 10 minutes, you realize it's way more alert than a human being, and it's way safer.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And your return rates, what's on, how often do people actually bring the cups back?
But they're really high. I mean, it does vary depending on different scenarios. So if what we class as sort of enclosed environments where, say like a visitor center or an office block, where people there's a high chance they're going to bring it back because they're not walking off. They're effectively within an enclosed environment. I mean, a really good example of enclosed environment is perhaps a cruise ship, where you literally can't go anywhere. You're going to bring it back because you can't go anywhere else. So you obviously see really high rates, in 90 return rates with those. Then you start to broaden out and go slightly more less enclosed. So things like university campuses, where again it's a campus, so the likelihood is they are going to bring it back. Mm-hmm. But again, you're in high 80s, low 90s in those kind of environments, and then all the way down to the worst case scenario, which is high street, where you're going to leave the cafe almost instantly. Mm-hmm. And we're having some interesting figures on that, because we've got some customers who are there. They offer both. So they say, well, actually, if you don't want to do a returnable, then you can take a single use. The option is yours. And we're finding that 1 in 4 currently will go with the borrowing platform, and they will borrow, which is actually quite high compared to generally the industry standard with that is 5%. But as I say, that's when they've used a deposit system. But so we're getting 1 in 4 will say, actually, given the option, they'll go with a borrowing model, and then you're getting sort of mid-80s return rates, which is actually high considering the majority of people are literally walking off.
Yeah, that's great. That's amazing. I was surprised to see that.
Yeah, I think we were. I mean, ultimately with the high street, our aim is to have ecosystems within one town. So effectively the whole town adopts the model. Mm-hmm. So every cafe, so there's no single use at all. It's not an option. Every cafe has adopted it. And then we have effectively a wash facility in the central hub of the town, where one person goes around literally on an electric bike, collecting up all the dirty cups, washing them, and then redistributing around the town. And then customers or the public have got a perfect ecosystem within the town to then bring the cups back, because you can bring the cup back to any cafe. And we've found in towns generally you're no more than 150 yards away from another coffee outlet. I mean, coffees are, as we all know, absolutely everywhere in town centres now. So that's the perfect ecosystem that we're trying to set up. So we're in talks in the UK with 7 or 8 towns that are looking to try and set that, what we call an all-in approach. So that's our big driver. That's what we're trying to instigate.
That's amazing. It's so interesting that earlier this week I interviewed Patrick Bishop. He runs a sustainable sort of one-time use cutlery for hospitality industry. It's made from recycled materials, nearshored, but he's also developed a business model around it that tracks the inventory. So he's built the technology into the business model just like you, and now his customers get this free software that makes it a lot easier for them to track when they run out and reorder and things like that. So I just love seeing innovation like yours and his of you start with a product, but then you figure out, how can I build more value around this through a unique business model, leveraging technology? I think it's Beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's really exciting as well. We're setting up action groups here in the UK around connected packaging, and you start to think where that could go, where every reusable item of packaging is digitalized and connected within the whole system. And, just from a logistics perspective, for a start, there's huge benefits. But then you start to talk about how customers could just wave their phone over the packaging and it could start delivering them a better experience. And everyone says, oh, single use is so convenient. But actually, if you look at it holistically, actually connected packaging could end up way more convenient, because your cup would already have a preloaded drink on it. You'd already paid on it. You just hand it to the barista. They scan it and go, oh, it's a latte, and they've already paid, and it's for down. And so your overall experience could actually start getting far more convenient by having everything connected. So I think that's really interesting where that could go. We're very much thinking, I think strategically for us, we really want to be at the front end of that and sort of bringing everyone together. The tech guys, the businesses developing chips and MFC chips and RFID chips, bring them together and get them talking to the big corporates, like in the UK, the big supermarkets. It's like, how can this all network itself so that we can create something that's more convenient, but also fundamentally save money for the industries and sectors as well. So yeah, that's really exciting.
What's your take on, and historically that's been sort of the common knowledge or assumption that recycled materials are more expensive than traditional plastics, and do you think, is that still true, and is it true in your business, or are you seeing a change there?
I'd love to say seeing a change, but if anything, it's got worse, if I'm really honest. So that the price of virgin plastic has just kept going down and down and down and down, to the point where in Europe, it's a sad fact, but there's recycling facilities shutting down. So recycling is going backwards, not forwards. So it just makes it more challenging. But I think the key is adding value. So yes, the material is more expensive, but if you can put it into a product that's adding value, and people recognize and see the value, you can sort of, I guess, stomach and soak up that cost. And the world we're in of circular design is definitely more challenging and harder. And I'll be lying if I don't see some business models and I think, oh, do you know what, life could be so much easier if we definitely, I do have moments like that, if I'm really honest, but it's a good challenge, and the challenge drives innovation, which is really good. As a designer, you innovate, you're at your best when you're set challenges. An analogy I use is Spotify. If someone says, oh, put a song on, please, and you say, well, what song? And they're like, well, any song, your mind goes blank. You're like, oh my God, I've got every song in the world and I can't think of one. But if they give you a genre and a year and they start feeding these challenges in, that's when your brain starts getting together.
Yeah.
And that's when you have your big idea. So putting these challenges in place definitely spurs innovation.
Yeah, constraints drive innovation. I did improv for a while when I first moved to the US. English, my second language. So I wasn't as funny in English as in Swedish, and I wasn't a great public speaker, and so I decided to try improv theater, and it was amazing. But so I recommend it to everyone that wants to become a better public speaker and be funnier. But to the constraints piece, it's so true there too, because if you put it on stage and say be funny, it's very hard. You have to be very talented. But if they say you are stuck in a little box with a squirrel, whatever it is, right? So, and strains coming out. You're in a Viking ship, and you run out of food, and suddenly creativity comes alive because now you have constraints around you. It's so true.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, we're kind of running out of time here. It's been such a pleasure to meet you, learn about what you're doing. I'm super inspired by what you're doing and love this connection of product and technology to add value to the world. And congrats on all your success. What's looking ahead in 2026 here? What are some of the key things that you're excited about next year?
I think it's driving the tap and reuse side of things to move the dial on single use, because I think that will unlock, and we'll get lots more people ditching single use. Our mission is to eradicate single use packaging, so I think that's going to be a really key driver. And I'm really interested by the whole connectivity side of things and where that can go. But yeah, there's plenty. We've got a list of many things we want to do next year, which is really good and exciting. So even though people say the market's hard, and it is, you're never short of opportunity and ideas. There's always opportunity out there.
Yep, that's awesome. Before we wrap, any advice to all the entrepreneurs out there or wannabe entrepreneurs from all your years?
It's a good. Yeah, how do I summarize it? I mean, I think enjoy the challenge. Be brave, take things on, really do not fear getting things wrong, and really put that across to your team. Failure is a good thing, because every time you learn. And most innovators I've ever met, from James Dyson to everybody else, they were never scared of failure. So go for it and enjoy that kind of innovative, and be entrepreneurial, and just live for that and love it, because you'll be rewarded.
That's great advice. Thanks, Dan. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us and sharing your story. Best of luck.
Thank you very much. Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.